So this is seminar number 7, and I just want to take you through the first 6 very briefly. And each time, think about how much control you have over those elements. So first of all, we looked at patterns of behaviour. I talked about the fact that we are products of our environment, of our upbringing, of the culture into which we're born. But we're also a consequence of the strategies that we have devised to get what we want. Those decisions that we made based on what happens to us. So it's not just that influence and nothing else. We made decisions based on those influences we were growing up. We made decisions on how we wanted to get what we needed, whatever our needs are, and they're very basic to begin with, but they become more complicated as we go through life. But those strategies that we first devised when we were very, very small, they're still in place, and they remain in place, unless of course we do something about it, which is what this personal development work is all about. So then in seminar 2 we looked at the mind, and that has a huge influence on us. And very often we feel as though we can't do anything about it. That little voice in our head that has been telling us things for years, that messages that we probably picked up from our family, from our upbringing, from our surroundings, and we just repeat them without even thinking about them sometimes. But we saw in seminar 2 that actually that we can do something about it. We may feel that our mind is against us a lot of the time, but actually if you look at it like a bored 3-year-old, if you don't give it something to do, it'll get up to mischief. It'll do all sorts. But as soon as you engage it, as soon as you start talking to it, asking questions, you can get to the real power of your mind and make it work for you. In the 3rd seminar, we looked at what we can practically do about our behaviour, about those little voices in our heads, about the things that we do automatically almost and have been doing for years. We talked about procedures, putting things in place. When you understand, when you become more aware of your patterns by the process of observation, by writing things down, reflecting, taking the time to have a good look at yourself. When you start to identify those patterns, then you can put procedures in place to do something about it. If you're emotional, for example, then you can make sure you go for a walk whenever you feel as though you're getting emotional, or if you're in a work situation, as I think we discussed at the time. Bring a colleague in. If you know you're going to go into an emotional meeting or emotional phone call, enlist the help of somebody. They don't necessarily have to do anything. In fact, as soon as you ask for their help, you're already feeling calmer. You're already feeling more in control. It's little things like that. And again, once you realise just how much control you have over situations and how you respond in those situations, then you begin to feel the power that you have. So procedures and routines will help us deal with the behaviour patterns when they rise. And then obviously we want to change those patterns or introduce new habits, change our strategies. And we talked about in seminar 5, I think, practice, breakthrough. That was the title of seminar 5. And it's about persevering when it feels as though nothing's going on. Those times when it feels like you're getting nowhere. But actually, if you understand that there's always something going on in the background, that every step you take takes you a step closer to your goal, even if you think that nothing is happening. Trust that there is something going on and keep going, because you'll have a breakthrough, and that can happen in an instant. And then last week we talked about the same kind of thing, building foundations. Again, you have so much control over things, so much more than you realise very often. And if you do nothing else, just keep on building those foundations. You don't have to worry about the goal. You don't have to think about it once you've clarified it for yourself. Just keep on, step by step, patiently, steadily building those foundations. And again, when you get to the point where something can happen, it can happen very quickly. Is that clear so far? Very good.
One
Sure.
one seminar, the intentions before the foundations.
Oh yeah, the power of thought. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that was one of the best ones for me as well. The power of.
I wasn't there.
Oh, weren't you?
I was going to say, you weren't there. You were traveling. I don't remember it.
And I missed it out. Very good.
Private session with you.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah, the power of thought, power of clarity. Again, very often all you need to do is to be clear about what it is you're looking for, what it is you want to achieve, what changes you want to make for yourself. That power of clarity. As soon as you have that clarity, it's almost as if you can just sit back and relax. And a word of warning there, and I discussed that in the seminar. I told the story of the guy who went to the fortune teller and was told he's going to be rich. So he did nothing, because the fortune teller had told him he was going to be rich. But she was kind of working on, if you carry on doing what you're doing, you will be rich. But he just thought, she's telling me I'm going to be rich, therefore whatever I do I'm going to be rich. No. It's not how it works. But that intention, that clarity, that initial thought gets so many things going. And again, the control that you have, if you understand the power of thought, and you understand that everything that manifests itself in your life comes from a thought that you had, either 5 minutes ago, or 10 years ago, or somewhere in between. And then you can start to think the right thoughts. And then you can start to see that actually you're, again, more powerful than you realise, you have more control than you realise. And it's that control which is necessary for what is at some stage bound to happen. And that's the cockiness. Okay. So, it was one of the best pieces of advice given to me throughout my training, and it became more and more relevant. I'll just read one small paragraph from the book, which puts it in perspective as far as personal development is concerned. And this is what my teacher said to me back in August 2001. After 9 to 18 months of enthusiasm comes the consolidation stage, where not so much happens. It usually lasts 1 to 3 years. This is the worst time in personal development. Monks walk out, people give up meditation. If someone makes it through this stage, that person will become a winner. Most people, however, get cocky or rebellious, or give up during this part of the journey. Now, I got cocky and rebellious, even though I'd been told, that's what's going to happen, that's what you're going to do, don't do it. Don't get cocky. Now, in the smaller scale, it's fairly easy. It was fairly easy for me to control my cockiness, especially because I was surrounded by people who reminded me the whole time. But the more progress you make, the more success you have with your personal development, the more likely it is that you're going to get cocky. And the further you rise, the further you're likely to fall when you do get cocky. And there's one final twist on all of that, which is there's a danger of you getting cocky about not being cocky. So when you tell yourself, I'm good because I'm not getting cocky, there's a chance of you rising to that cockiness level again. But that comes a little bit later. The important message, first of all, is that it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It will happen. It does happen. In fact, when I work with clients, it's always a good measure of their progress as to when I tell them, listen, I'm professionally obliged to tell you, don't get cocky. We talked about how important it is to build procedures into your daily life to counteract those patterns which don't serve you very well. Now, what normally happens is those procedures are successful and they get you to a point where you wanted to get to. And then my clients, or anybody really, just think, hey, I'm doing it now. I don't need those procedures anymore. They've served me well, but I can do this. I've got this from here. And that's cockiness, because what they don't realise is the procedures that got them to that point. I use quite a lot of sporting analogies because it's so helpful there. in any sport, those who excel are doing the same things that we're talking about here. They're understanding their patterns, they're working with their mind, they've got procedures in place, they're understanding the clarity of thought and intention. And they'll say things like, if they've just won a tournament, there's plenty of time for me to celebrate when I've retired. I've got to practice for the next tournament and the next tournament. And they'll go out for a beer, they'll celebrate with their team, but they're going to be on the training ground, on the training courts, again Monday morning. Because that's how it works for them. One of the things that I want to come back to later about how do we celebrate our awesomeness, how do we celebrate our greatness and still remain with our feet on the ground. And one of the ways is remember your procedures. And when it comes to evaluating your progress, which is what it is essentially, then already when you use that term, progress evaluation, you're taking a lot of the emotion out of it. So my advice would be to sit down and write just how awesome you are. Go to town on it. If you take the time to write a page about how awesome you are, and it seems, I don't know about how it seems to you guys, but that doesn't happen very often in England. It's certainly not a message that I was given or permission that I was given to write down how great you are. It seems a little bit weird, but there's nothing wrong with it because you're not showing off to anybody. And I tell every single one of my clients to write things down because, and I've never really addressed it, I don't think, in these seminars, but, or maybe I have. When you take the time, let's say 10 minutes at the end of the day, or half an hour, however long, or however short, when you take that time to write about your day, or about your observations about your behaviour, or how great you are, you're making a commitment to yourself. And also, because writing things down is a lot slower than the speed of thought, and a lot slower than just talking to somebody about how things have been today, you allow certain thoughts and feelings to surface that normally don't get a chance. So you go through things, you go through the day more methodically, you go through your greatness in more detail than you would do if you were just to tell somebody. And then if you allow yourself to show off to yourself, nobody's looking, nobody needs to read it, but you can do that. What you'll also see is that I think it's very difficult to write something that's not true in that environment when you're writing it for yourself. Because what's the point of lying? Again, nobody's going to see it. You're not writing this for anybody else. You're writing it for yourself. So you're not going to lie. You're going to tell the truth. This book is full of all that sort of stuff. And when you've written it, if you're looking at your behaviours on the one hand, you're confronted with the truth of who you are. And also, if you've written about how great you are, you can see it in greater detail. And that process is going to keep your feet on the ground because it's taking effort to do. It's a commitment to yourself. You can deal with situations however you want to. You can become whoever you want to. You can become that person who's a bit more happy than they used to be. And it's just a case of practicing. Practice, practice, practice. And you have opportunities every day to practice. You know, you don't need a starter kit. You don't need equipment to do this work. You just need a pen and paper at the most to write stuff down. But you have material that you can work with every day. And you have the resources, and you have the power and the control over your life to do whatever you want to do. And again, that's what we've been talking about, is it's okay to get excited or happy or whatever we're talking about, however we describe it. But if we can do that in calmness, with an appreciation of what's going on, with our feet on the ground, knowing that there are procedures in place that will look after us so that we can enjoy this again tomorrow or next week, that's the trick, that's the key. And that will help you to celebrate your awesomeness as well. Because whilst it's damaging to get cocky, because you lose your focus, because you do things that perhaps you wouldn't normally do, because you get too excited or ahead of yourself, it shouldn't stop you from appreciating who you are.